Okay, here we go. All right, so we are in the second of the 10 commandments, and we're going to conclude it today. And as we said, according to Maimonides and others, there are four biblical mitzvahs that are contained within this particular commandment. So let's start on page 409, and we're going to do verse 5. Verse 5 contains two of them. The first is, you shall not prostrate yourself to them, which we discussed last week. So now we're going to continue. Hannah, verse 5 on 409.
You shall not prostrate yourself to them, nor worship them, for I am Hashem your God, a jealous God, who visits the sin of fathers upon children to the third and fourth generations for my enemies, but who shows kindness for thousands of generations to those who love me and observe my commandments.
Okay, so we have a lot to talk about tonight. So first of all, tonight we're going to talk about this next mitzvah, which is the fourth mitzvah of the second commandment. We call it commandments, but it's really statements. So there is, you should not have, which means you shouldn't recognize, consider, think about the existence of another deity. You shouldn't make it, even if it's not for yourself. You shouldn't bow, even if that's not the proper way of service. And now it says you should not worship. What does it mean to worship? It means that we are going to perform a service to this particular deity, which is in the normal manner, whether it is to the idol itself or a symbol of the idol. For example, a statue, like if they have in Greek mythology, and they have these statues that they make of the god of this, the god of that, whatever it might be. So if somebody is going to serve these in their normal manner, even if we consider it to be very odd and strange, this is being prohibited biblically, carrying the severe requirements that we'll see. There was Pa'or. Pa'or was one of the deities of the Moabites and Midianites. And we'll see in a moment, we'll get to Pa'or a little bit more closely, in which the way that they used to serve the Pa'or was by one exposing themselves as they would relieve themselves. That was the service. There's another one called Marcolis. Marcolis, they used to take rocks and throw at it, like taking target practice. That was the service. There was something called kemosh, which is, again, amongst the Moabites, they would shave their heads. That was the means of serving their deity. And then we have Molech. What is the Molech? Let's turn to page 1007. We're going to do a lot of turning tonight. 1007. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 30 and 31, page 1007.
30 is like the middle of a sentence. Just start there.
Okay, start on 29. I'm easy to get along.
When Hashem your God will cut down the nations where you come to drive them away before you, and you drive them away and settle in their land, beware for yourself lest you be attracted after them after they have been destroyed before you, and lest you seek out their gods, saying, how did these nations worship their gods? And even I will do the same. You shall not do so to Hashem your God, for everything that is an abomination of Hashem that he hates have they done to their gods, for even their sons and their daughters have they burned in the fire of their gods.
That particular deity in which they would bring their sons and daughters and even others and have them burned was called the Molech. Molech. Some say that what this was is that they had two rows of fire and they would have the children pass through the fire, walking with the fire on both sides. Others say that they actually took their own children and burned them and had them destroyed. That was the service. It was like when they gave the human sacrifice who did to King Kong and the Mayas, right? They had this. That was their service. This is the Molech. That's what they did. In addition, any type of service which demonstrates an act of affection or reverence to this idol or this symbol, such as kissing the idol, washing the idol, smearing it, cleaning it, shining it with oil, sweeping before it, dressing it. All of these are considered acts that a servant would do for the master. And therefore, this is included in the prohibition of worshiping and serving. So now we have a major problem. I was going to say this for the end, but I said, you know what? Let's start with this. Major problem. Let's go to Deuteronomy, page 965. 965. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 27, 28, and 29.
Hashem will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Hashem will lead you.
This is if we are disobeying and we're not behaving appropriately.
There you will serve gods, the handiwork of man, of wood and stone, which do not see and do not hear and do not eat and do not smell.
Okay, we will fall to such a level that we will not be allowed to own property, receive an education, to be able to go into a business. Certainly we're not going to be professionals. They are going to make us the servants of their idols, so to say. What kind of idols? So look what it says. They don't see, hear, eat, nor smell. Continue, please.
From there you will seek Hashem, your God, and you will find him, if you search for him with all your heart and all of your soul.
So Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Klal Yisrael, those who are about to enter the land of Israel, that even when you fall to the depths of degradation, you will seek out God, and if you do so with all your heart and soul, you will find him. No matter what the circumstances, they can take everything away. They cannot touch our soul. Okay, that is a tremendous question that's asked. In Psalm 115, which we say in Hallel, there it says, Pel lahem v'lo yedaberu, einayim lahem v'lo yiru. They have eyes, they don't see. They have ears, they don't hear. And it says also, Pel lahem, they have a mouth, and they do not speak. What's missing over here in 965? No, doesn't talk about the nose. But in contrast to the book of Psalms, in Psalms it clearly says they have a mouth and they don't speak. And over here it tells us clearly, it says they don't see, they don't hear, they don't eat, they don't smell. Why doesn't it say they don't speak? Why does it omit that? So Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna says, we saw last week when we spoke about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, known in Babylonian as, what were the Babylonian names? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Okay, very good. Okay, I don't even know why that's important, but okay, so we saw about when Nebuchadnezzar made the statue, wanted them to bow down, they refused, they were thrown into a furnace. Nebuchadnezzar had the statue, and he wanted Daniel. Daniel lived to be 120. Daniel was revered even by Babylonians, respected by Nebuchadnezzar. And as a matter of fact, there was great envy by some of the Babylonians that Nebuchadnezzar appointed Daniel to be one of his greatest, closest advisors. And there was great envy. And they said to Nebuchadnezzar, you know, you're having some, I don't know if it's a birthday, anniversary, or whatever it might be. It would be appropriate to have at least your closest servants come and pay homage and to bow to what you believe in. Show a little respect for you. We're not asking them to denounce their faith, but just show respect for you. So what was their plan? They knew Daniel wouldn't do this. So they were hoping to cause a rift between Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. So this incredible idol was unusual. This idol was saying, Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. And Nebuchadnezzar brought Daniel and said, bow. He said, I don't bow to idols, you know. I'm a Jew, I don't bow to idols. He said, come here. Did you ever have an idol like this? I am the Lord your God. Everybody was like astounded. There must be something here, some unique, something spiritual. What's going on? Is this indeed some manifestation of the divine? And then Daniel said, my king, would you be opposed if I kiss your idol on the lips? Opposed? Could there be a greater sign of submission? He said, kissing is one of the signs of affection and reverence, by all means. Daniel approaches, he puts his lips to the mouth of the idol. He turns away and he says, my king, your idol is worthless. And it no longer can speak. And not only that, the idol falls over and breaks apart. What happened? What's going on? Daniel was puzzled. Why is it that King David writes that the idols do not have the ability to speak, and yet in the Torah, the 5 books, Moshe mentions that there will be an idol that doesn't see, hear, eat, nor spell, which suggests that there will be an idol who speaks. There will be an idol who speaks. What should we do? So look at the next verse. It says, from there you will seek Hashem. From where? From where this idol seems to proclaim its being unique and divine from its mouth, seek Hashem your God. Daniel said, if this thing is saying there's got to be something going on here. Indeed, they found they had something that was written, and it was written from the time when they left Egypt, and someone found it, or whatever it might be, whatever the story is, and they put it into the mouth of the idol. And therefore, Daniel said, let me put my mouth on it, so that he was pulling it out. He pulled out that written word of Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am the God your Lord. I am the Lord your God. He pulled it out. As the verse says, from there you will seek Hashem your God, you will find him. But you have to do it with all your heart and soul. This is what Daniel understood, that Moshe, by omitting the ability to speak, was alluding to this affair. Okay, what are some of the customary acts that are prohibited? So let's go to page 875. This is at the end of the portion of Balak. Balak was hired by Bilam was hired by Balak to curse the Jews. God did not allow the curse to take hold, and the words actually came from the mouth of Bilam, and they became a blessing. Upon leaving in disgrace, he gives some advice to Balak. He tells him, this God of Israel, he hates licentious behavior. Therefore, let me give you the following advice, and Balak followed it. So chapter 25, verses 1 through 3, please.
Israel settled in the Shittim, and the people began to commit idolatry with the daughters of Moab. They invited the people to the feasts of their gods. The people ate and prostrated themselves to their gods. Israel became attached to Baal Peor, and the wrath of Hashem flared up against Israel.
This is inconceivable. We're talking about the generation in the 40th year, the generation that's ready to go into the land of Israel. What are they doing? what's going on? They're living with Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Okay, as of this point, Aaron and Miriam had died. They're living in this existence of spirituality with miracles constantly. What are they going? So the advice that Bilam said, let the daughters go out and let them, the men, when they see some of the men going for a stroll or whatever it is, let them invite them into their stores where they're selling some merchandise, some food or whatever, something you could bring home for your wife, whatever, and be very friendly and warm. When the men came into the stores, one thing led to another. They invited them to, gave them something to eat, to drink, and then they took their Baal Peor, the Peor idol. And they said to these men, do you want to worship this? And then said, how do you worship? We don't do this. Our faith is in the one true God. And they said, this you could do. They said, how do you worship this? What are you talking about? They said, one defecates on it. I said, what? That's what you do? He said, yes. So they thought their intent was to disgrace it. And therefore they said they didn't have intention to do idolatry. Their intention was to disgrace it. But here is the tragic mistake. And that is, no matter what our intent might be, if it is a customary act in which this is how we serve this idol, then that's what they engaged in. And they should have said, we have nothing, an idol, goodbye, thanks for the dinner, for whatever, keep the merchandise, I'm out. They made a mistake. How do we understand this type of idolatry? What kind of divine service is this? Our sages tell us that this philosophy was that there's no shame. There's no need for a person to be embarrassed. Basically, anything goes. There's no shame. People walk around today, they go out and walking, taking a walk, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And 60 years ago, maybe that's how a person looked at the beach. If you went to the beach, maybe that's how a person dressed. But now, every day, that's what it is. There's no shame. I remember as a boy when I would watch I Love Lucy, husband and wife, and of course the rule was they had to have separate beds. And you couldn't say the word pregnant. The famous episode when Lucy's having the baby, 50 million viewers, you were not allowed to say the word pregnant. She was expecting. She was expecting. Okay, so anything goes. No moral compass. That's the service. That's their philosophy. That's their ideology. That's their religion. You do whatever you feel you want to do. No morals, no ethics, nothing. And why is that such an abomination that it falls into this category? Because it is a desecration of the divine nobility of man. That's a quote from Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. Desecrate the divine, every human being. There's a divine nobility. And when we live our lives in this type of thing, whatever you want is fine. The spark of holiness that exists has been desecrated. Whether that was their intention or not, it was inappropriate. Okay. This concludes the portion of the prohibited activities in regard to idolatry. This mitzvah of idolatry is one of the 7 Noahide laws. When Noah came out of the ark with his sons, he was given certain laws, certain guidelines. And these guidelines, the Talmud in the tractate Sanhedrin 56b, shows us how we derive what's called the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noah, the 7 mitzvahs given to the descendants of Noah, which means every human being. Jews have 613 mitzvahs. Everyone has 7 mitzvahs. What are they? Number one, there is an obligation that there be a system of civil laws, there be a just and proper society. Number two, it is biblically prohibited for the Gentile world and including to the Jewish world, blasphemy. That means that they have to recognize the existence of God as supreme being and to submit ourselves, not that we should be critical and to be blasphemous. Number three, idolatry, as we have described, prohibited for the Gentile world.
It almost sounds like the same thing.
No, blasphemy is that there's a God and I curse him. This God, whatever. I'm not performing idolatry. It's a slight difference. Number four, illicit prohibited unions. Incest, thank you. Incest. Number five, murder, taking another life, theft, stealing. And the seventh is it's prohibited. There's a kashrus law for the Gentile world called Aver min achai in Hebrew, which means eating the meat, limb, that came from a live animal. So let's say an animal was in a fight or whatever and had a limb torn off, and the animal is still alive. You want to take some of that meat, you want to cook it. It's biblically prohibited for Jew and Gentile. So these laws apply also to the entire world. Now let's go back to 409. Let's take a look at this. So we shouldn't prostrate nor worship them. I am Hashem your God. 409. What does it say? I am Hashem your God in the middle of verse 5. See it?
For I am Hashem your God, a jealous God, who visits the sin of fathers upon children to the third and fourth generations for my enemies, but who shows kindness for the thousands of generations to those who love me and observe my commandments.
Okay. How do we understand? What does it mean I am a jealous God? Jealousy is a human trait. One of the fundamental principles of our faith is that there is nothing human that can be attributed unto God. God doesn't get angry, we learn. God uses anger. God doesn't get jealous, he uses jealousy. What does it mean, I'm a jealous God? And not only here, but let's go to page 961. We see the word jealousy used here in regard to idolatry. 961. Okay. Chapter 4, we want verse 9 through 24. So let's sit back, relax, and let's hear Moshe Rabbeinu as he's talking to the generation that is prepared to enter the land of Israel. Let's start from, what I say, verse what? Verse 9 through 24, yes.
Only beware for yourself and greatly beware for your soul, lest you forget the things that your eyes have beheld, and lest you remove them from your heart all the days of your life, and make them known to your children and your children's children. So
not only should we not forget, we have an obligation to teach our children and grandchildren. What should we teach them?
The day that you stood before Hashem your God at Horeb, when Hashem said to me,
Horeb is Mount Sinai.
gather the people to me, and I shall let them hear my words, so that they shall learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and they shall teach their children. So you approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain was burning with fire up to the heart of heaven, darkness, cloud, and thick cloud. Hashem spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You were hearing the sound of words, but you were not seeing a form, only a sound. He told you of his covenant that he commanded you to observe, the 10 declarations, and he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets. Hashem commanded me at that time to teach you decrees and ordinances, that you shall perform them in the land to which you cross to possess it. But you shall greatly beware for your souls, for you did not see any likeness on the day Hashem spoke to you at Horeb or Sinai from the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make yourselves a carved image, a likeness of any shape, a form of a male or a female, a form of any animal on the earth, a form of any winged bird that flies in the heaven, a form of anything that creeps on the ground, a form of any fish that is in the water under the earth, unless you raise your eyes to the heaven and you see the sun and the moon and the stars, the entire legion of heaven, and you be drawn astray, bow to them and worship them, which Hashem your God has appointed to all the peoples under the entire heaven. But Hashem has taken you and withdrawn you from the iron crucible, from Egypt, to be a nation of a heritage for him as this very day. Hashem became angry with me because of you, and he swore that I would not cross the Jordan and not come to the good land that Hashem your God gives you as a heritage. For I will die in this land. I am not crossing the Jordan, but you are crossing, and you shall possess this good land. Beware for yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Hashem your God that he has sealed with you, and you make yourselves a carved image, a likeness of anything, as Hashem your God has commanded you. For Hashem your God, he is a consuming fire, a jealous God.
Here too, we see in regard to idolatry, the images, we use this phrase, a jealous God. Let's go to page 975, Deuteronomy chapter 6. Here we want verses 14 and 15.
You shall not follow after gods of others, of the gods of the peoples that are around you. For a jealous God is Hashem, your God among you, lest the wrath of Hashem, your God, will flare against you, and he destroy you from upon the face of the earth.
Okay, so we see 3 times in the Torah, and there are other times also throughout the scriptures, in which we find the phrase that God is a jealous God, particularly in regards to idolatry. How do we understand this? So let's go back to page 403. God is speaking to Moshe to prepare us to receive the Torah at Sinai. We want verse, chapter 19, verse 5.
And now, if you hearken well to me and observe my covenant, you shall be to me the most beloved treasure of all peoples, for mine is the entire world.
Okay. In addition to the next verse being ministers, a kingdom of ministers, a holy nation, we were chosen to be a beloved treasure. A beloved treasure. That's our relationship to God. In the prophet Hosea, chapter 2, let's see, verse 18. What does the prophet say? He says, and it shall be on that day, the word of Hashem, that you will call me Ishi, my husband. You will no longer call me Ba'ali, my master. What is this? The prophet is saying there will be a period in the future in which the word Baal, master, what? The husband is the master of his wife. It refers to the wife's relationship of fulfilling her duties. She has duties to her husband. The husband has duties to her. God is saying our relationship will be not one in which you feel that you have an obligation to fulfill my will because that's your duty, but rather you will look at me as your ish. Ish means a beloved husband, one that you wish to serve out of love, not out of duty. And a husband should be an ish. He should want to provide and serve his wife out of love. We see from this verse clearly that this relationship between God and Klal Yisrael is similar when we were talking about prior to receiving the Torah. If you remember months ago, our bond with God is that of marriage. Let's go to verse, let's see, over here, 21 and 22, What does it say? And these are the verses that men say in the morning when they wrap their tefillin around their finger. No, I'm talking about in the book of Hosea. You don't have it here. Book of Hosea. Okay? When we wrap the tefillin around the finger like a ring, we say these verses. Hosea is saying in the name of God, I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me with righteousness, with justice, with kindness, with mercy. I will betroth you to me with faith, and you will know Hashem. Clearly here, the prophet is telling us our relationship with God is one of betrothal, marriage. That's what we're talking about. And therefore, what it means that God is jealous is that God doesn't feel jealousy, but God is saying my relationship with you is one of a bond of marriage. And in a bond of marriage, a husband should be loyal to his wife should be loyal to the husband. And they should not have their eyes scanning what's taking place elsewhere. This is not healthy for the marriage. And therefore, a healthy marriage necessitates an element of jealousy. If a husband is not jealous of his wife, there's a problem in that marriage. Why? He doesn't trust her? It's not a question of trust. If things are going beyond normal behavior and activities, why aren't you jealous? Why isn't she jealous of her husband? This tells us clearly that there's a major problem. The fact that one might be a little jealous of the other, women know this. They like it when the husband's getting a little bit jealous, whatever it is, show a little attention to something. This indicates the strong, healthy bond. That's what it means. I will not tolerate any thoughts of idolatry, because that unto itself is diametrically opposed to the healthy relationship of marriage and betrothal that we have, and it necessitates a display and demonstration of jealousy. But not that God is jealous. That's a human trait. That's why we find it here. Now, what does it mean as we continue back on 409, in which it says, I'm a jealous God. I will visit the sin of the fathers upon the children. Don't we have a problem with that? We visit the sin of the fathers on the children? Why are the children responsible for the sins of the fathers? So let's go to page 715, Leviticus chapter 26. 715. Whoops, where's 715? This is the portion of the Tochach of the rebuke, in which it says that if indeed we go astray and we become casual with God and we pay no attention and we deny his Torah and everything, so there will be horrible consequences. And we will eventually be dispersed amongst the nations. And verse 40.
Then they will confess their sin and the sin of their forefathers for the treachery with which they betrayed me, and also for having behaved toward me with casualness.
Okay. We will confess after everything that happened. Why has God allowed these very difficult consequences to come? It's not punishment. Remember, we learned this when we went through the 13 principles. God doesn't punish because he's angry, but rather it is a means of conveying to his beloved, chosen treasure, betrothed people the severity of our behavior. So he shows us a very strict, that if that doesn't work, you know what? You put your hand in the fire, you're going to get burned. Why did you allow me to get burned? It's the nature of fire. This is what happens. But now we'll learn and we'll stay away. So God says when we do learn, we will confess. Well, look what we're confessing. Confessing our sin and the sins of our forefathers. Why are we confessing the sins of our forefathers? How do we understand that? So this, we are told, is that it says 3 and 4 generations. That's what it said, that God will, the sins of the fathers for 3 and 4 generations. And that doesn't sound right either. 3 grandchildren, great-grandchildren are going to be responsible for what their great-grandfather was doing? 4 generations, so our sages say, We're talking only situations where the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren are perpetuating the same evil, the same denial of God. They're taking what their great-grandfather taught them, and they are just letting it blossom until it has become rooted within the family. As of that point, it would seem it's so deeply rooted, we have to uproot it. Okay, but it still doesn't answer the question. Fine, but I should be responsible for what happened 4 generations ago? Still, it's difficult. So here, the Archaim says, here meaning in Leviticus, that we just learned where they confess their sins, they assumed that great-grandpa, he was not a nice man. He was a crook, and he was a philanderer or whatever, and he had a good life. He died a wealthy man. People respected him. I guess he was guiltless. I guess his life did not find disfavor in the eyes of Hashem. And based on that, they continued with such a lifestyle until eventually it is brought clearly to them that this was incorrect. What does it mean they confess the sins of their fathers? We confess now that we realize that which we assumed was guilt-free. On the contrary, we see now how evil and corrupt it truly was. All right, fine. That's why they confess. Still haven't answered the question. But why are we responsible for what they did? So let's go to this past week's parsha, Shlach. They send the spies. Spies come back with a horrible report. God says to Moshe, all of Klal Yisrael was crying. They don't want to go to Israel. They want to go back to Egypt. I'm going to destroy them. Moshe understands that the reason why God is telling him this, not to get Moshe's permission, but to enable Moshe to come and be our advocate and to pray on our behalf, which he does. What does he say? Let's go to page 807. Let's see what he says. You know what? Let's start on 805. We'll start with verse 13. This is what Moshe answers Hashem when Hashem says, I'm going to destroy these people.
Moses said to Hashem, then Egypt, from whose midst you brought up this nation with your power, will hear, and they will say about the inhabitants of this land, they have heard that you, Hashem, are in the midst of this people, that you, Hashem, appeared eye to eye, and your clouds stand over them, and that in a pillar of cloud you go before them by day, and in a pillar of fire at night. Yet you killed this people like a single man.
That's what Hashem is saying. I'm going to destroy them. Like, wipe them all out. Go ahead.
And the nations that heard of your fame will say, because Hashem lacked the ability to bring this people to the land that he had sworn to give them, he slaughtered them in the wilderness. And now may the strength of my Lord be magnified, as you have spoken, saying, Hashem, slow to anger, abundant in kindness, forgiver of iniquity and willful sin, and who cleanses but does not cleanse completely, recalling the iniquity of parents upon children to the 3rd and 4th generations. Forgive now the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of your kindness, and as you have forgiven this people from Egypt until now.
Okay. Most of this defense, if this would be my defense attorney, I would say, if these are your closing arguments, most of what you said is very nice. Why are you mentioning, you want to say that God is slow to anger, he's abundant in kindness, he forgives iniquity, willful sins, he cleanses? That's great. I need that. Why are you mentioning that you don't cleanse completely? Why are you mentioning that you recall the iniquity of parents upon children, 3rd and 4th generation? That's what is being said over here in this commandment. That I am a jealous God and I will remember the sins of the fathers for the 3rd and 4th generation. Wait a minute. That's what the prosecutor is going to say. You're my defense attorney. What are you saying? So the Ramban says something very, very important. This statement back, where are we on page 400 and what? 403, where are we? Page 409. This statement on page 409, in which we say God is a jealous God, right? We understand that. And we say he visits the sins of fathers on children to the third and fourth generation for my enemies. You know what God is saying? Even for my enemies, even for those who have perpetuated the corrupt, sinful behavior and it's taking deep root, I will be patient. I'll wait 3 and 4 generations before they see my rejection, my anger. Why will I be so patient? Because this is an amazing statement. Even if someone is as corrupt and sinful as a human being can be, they might have a child, grandchild, great-grandchild who's righteous. And therefore I won't destroy them. Because if I destroy them, that could impair the future generations. I will wait. And what happens if, let's say they have a great-grandchild who turns out to be somebody who is a fine, outstanding human being and a wonderful Jewish person? It'll be a merit for their parents, great-grandparents. I will be patient. I will consider the sins of the fathers on the sons, enabling the sons to remove those sins. That's what God is saying. And that's why Moshe invokes this in his defense of Klal Yisrael. God, you forgive iniquity and willful sin, and don't destroy them. They might have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who turn out to be righteous individuals, and that will cleanse and erase and obliterate the sins of this generation of these fathers. So what looks like a horrific statement that we can't understand, you visit the sins of the fathers of the children? Yes, yes, to the extent that if the children return to me, I will remove the entire sin even from their fathers. What an amazing statement. Look how this is turned around completely. And the proof that this is something which is meritorious for us is Moshe utilizing this in his defense. Now, the last thing, take this around 5 minutes. So God says in verse 6, I show kindness for thousands of generations. A generation is how many years? 25? 20, 25? So 1,000 would be what? 25,000? The world's going to be 25,000 years. The world's going to be how many years? 6,000. Maximum of 6,000 years, we said. 25. So whatever it means, I don't know, but it means a long time, a long time. But for who? For those who love me and observe my commandments. Who? Who possibly? What does it mean, love? We have a mitzvah, the ahavta as Hashem Elokecha. We should love the Lord our God, no question. Those who love me. Who is that? Who are we referring to when we say those who love me? So the prophet Isaiah, chapter 41, verse 8. The prophet Isaiah says as follows, but you, O Israel, my servant Jacob, you whom I have chosen, offspring of Abraham, who loved me. Abraham Ehavi. Whenever we find that it refers to the one who loves me, it's referring to Abraham. Abraham. We said last week, there was idolatry. We say in Ethics of Our Fathers, there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and there was such idolatry that permeated the world. It corrupted human thought. It corrupted human and animal activity. It had to be removed. But then another 10 generations, and there was again idolatry. But this time, the hero of humanity came upon the face of the earth, Avraham. Avraham, who was raised in a house of idolatry, he didn't have parents who showed him the way. He discovered all by himself the existence of the one true God. And we remember we said last week, Ur Kasdim. What is Ur Kasdim? Ur Kasdim, we said, well, that's where Abraham comes from. Avram comes from where? Mesopotamia, or means the furnace of Castor. When Nimrod, the king, learned that Avraham was preaching against idolatry and he was speaking about monotheism, he told him, either you denounce your faith, or I'm throwing you into a furnace. Avraham said, I will never denounce my faith. He was thrown into the furnace. Remember, they see God himself came. The angel Gabriel said, let me protect Avraham. And God said, no, I am unique up in the heavens. Avraham is unique on earth. I will save Avraham. God himself saved Avraham. He wasn't harmed whatsoever by the fire. When his brother Haran was asked, who are you in league with? Nimrod with the idolaters or Avraham? He said, Avraham, look at that. I'm no fool. I'm with Avraham. Look at this miracle. So they threw him in the furnace. He was destroyed. Avraham was willing to martyr himself. Okay, that's magnificent. Avraham wasn't the only one martyred himself. He wasn't the only one. So why is he given the title by the prophet Isaiah that the commentaries say this verse is referring to those who love me? Avraham. And those who follow in his footsteps, those who seize the covenant I made with Avraham. So there's a B'nai Yissaschar, in which he said, I mentioned one last week, I'll mention one this week, an incredible thought. He says, we have learned that if somebody says, there are 3 mitzvahs that if someone says, you do this, or we're going to destroy you. Any mitzvah, we have to protect our lives. I don't want to do it, but Torah says, my life comes first. But if somebody says, either you're going to murder this person or we're going to take your life. We have no permission to take the life of someone else. We do nothing. If they kill us, they kill us. If somebody says, I want you to engage in this incestual relationship, we're going to kill you. Can't do it. If somebody says, I want you to engage in the idolatry, can't do it. This is called Yehor Val Yaver. It is derived from the verses. It is part of the mitzvahs that a Jew has. That a Jew has. What about a Gentile? The Gentile, we said we went through the mitzvahs of the Gentile, but they're not obligated necessarily to say, well, at the cost of my life, I'll martyr myself. They don't have that. So the question is, why was Abraham ready to martyr himself? He wasn't Jewish. When did Abraham become Jewish? When he was chosen by God. When was that? That was later on when God established the covenant of the circumcision. He chose Abraham. This is the covenant. You've been chosen and your descendants, you and Sarah. But Abraham wasn't Jewish yet. He did not have the mitzvah of being a martyr. How was he allowed to do it? You know something? He wasn't. He wasn't. He did it anyway. Why? He did it because even though he knew he wasn't allowed to martyr himself, his love for God was so strong, he could not denounce his faith. I heard an example. The princess, young couple, just married, and the princess sees this young man. She's never seen such a handsome man. So she has the police pull him over, bring him to her father, the king's court, and find him guilty on trumped up charges. They say, we're not guilty. This is it. What are the consequences? Consequences are death. You kill the man. The princess says, we'll spare your life if you spend one evening with me. What? Here's your option. Spend one evening with the princess, or it's death. His bride says, she's distraught and brokenhearted. She says, do it. She doesn't want to have him die. Do it. You have my permission. Do it. He says, I can't. I could never hurt you. I could never do that. I'd rather die. Princess saw this. How strong his love and his bond with his wife, how strong it was. She said, let them go. This is Avraham. Avraham was in a situation in which, go ahead, spend the evening, do the idolatry. Don't let yourself be thrown in a fire. Permit it. I can't. My love for Hashem is so strong. I'd rather die. I'd rather sin and be put to death than to know that I have betrayed my true creator. That's why Abraham earned the title of the beloved. That's what it means to love, to be for those who love me. God shows kindness for thousands of generations for those who love me. What does it mean to love? There is nothing I could contemplate to do, even if it's permissible, if I know it will hurt you. That's Avraham. Avraham and Sarah, they are the first Jews. That's the covenant with Avraham. I'm going to stop here. We're going to take a break because next week I'll be returning from out of town or whatever. I won't have time to prepare. And we'll see after that. We might take a break for a couple of weeks or maybe 4 or 5 weeks. We'll see what it is, or maybe a summer break. And then we'll continue and we will finish. Now in the fall, we're going to finish this, God willing. If we start, I don't know when we'll start, maybe late August or something, whatever it might be, early September, because the holidays are at the end of September this year.
Early September.
Early September this year?
They were late.
No,
October this
late. No, it's not even Shredders Thomas. Why we got no. Yeah, I think it's like September 29th, early October. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we'll finish this, which will take time. We've got the third commandment, fourth commandment, which is what? Shabbos. Spend a couple of weeks on Shabbos, and then we have the fifth commandment. And then we'll go into the others, which will be a little bit more quickly. And then what I would like to do is see if we can resume our Wednesday afternoon, in which this time we're going to do the books of the prophets. Okay? Not as in-depth as this. Get back to the prophets. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Yes.